We begin this chapter after Vikir had lost concentration in the battle. After seeing that Perry had been absorbed by the elite demon Dantalion, our boy ended up being absorbed too. We now see him alone, in a place different from where the battle took place. Even in the endless darkness and being alone, Vikir's face was not filled with despair or fear but a confident look to ensure that the demon will die by his hand. But looking in front of where he was, Vikir spots an endless amount of people, sitting on the ground in a neatly formed rows at a place that looks like a sewage area where water was flowing constantly past them, but they remained seated, not even raising their faces and being unbothered by the water. Looking closely at his current situation, Vikir recalled that he had been swallowed up by Dantalion's skill, making him believe that his current whereabouts was somewhere inside of the skill Dantalion had cast on him moments before. Seeing the endless rows of people sitting on the ground, Vikir grew nervous as a sweat drop appeared on the side of his face, thinking that these people were the ones that had been eaten up by Dantalion. As he continued to look at them, a sudden wave of pain started to surge in his body, forming veins that could be seen clearly on his face. The purple mist started from his legs as he remained submerged in the waters of the sewage. The mist was not stopping at all as it continued to spread around his body. The waters of the area started to flow even more fiercely. As Vikir recognized the feeling he was having, it was the same disgusting feeling that he had gotten when Dantalion's face was pieced together on his wrist like before. He knew exactly what the purple mist represented. It was the traumas of the people in front of him. All of their traumas were now flooding into his body. A young boy sat in the front of the rows, his face clearly missing as a small voice was heard, begging for something to stop as it was hurting him. Hearing those pleas, Vikir places his own hand on the young boy's head, as a way to comfort him, kneeling down even though their traumas were flowing into him endlessly. As he comforted the boy, Vikir couldn't help but recall seeing Perry's face amongst the faces he had cut from before. So if the people that Dantalion had eaten were all here, then amongst these endless rows of humans that were eaten, Perry's body should be here as well. The people sitting on the ground continued to voice out their pain, saying that they were scared and exhausted. Some wanted to die right away, others lost all hope to live anymore. All kinds of negative feelings were displayed by them, all in front of Dolores who stood before them. Seeing them and hearing what they were feeling, Dolores' knees became weak as she kneeled onto the ground, realizing that these were all the vindictive spirits who were eaten by the demon known as Dantalion. The moment she mentioned his name, the elite demon appeared right behind her, asking her how she thought about the situation before him and revealing that the people sitting in front of her were the collection of human souls that he had eaten so far. Dantalion finally appears in his true demonic form, a white form with green eyes with 4 tentacle-like ears appearing on the side of his face, with eyes and mouth split in half between them. He smiles widely and happily tells Dolores that he had been selective since he didn't want to eat ugly humans. Hearing the sounds of weeping and despair, the elite demon was instantly turned on, asking Dolores if their sounds were resonating in her heart as well. More information about the demon is revealed. Risk rating with S+, unknown size, site of discovery was the Gate of the Fall, deep underground and in the snake's lair. The 9th corpse, natural enemy of humans and, being invulnerable and immortal, one of the 10 disasters. Dolores finally spoke out against the demon, asking him how he could commit such sins, even with the children from the orphanage. But the demon didn't see anything wrong with his actions, saying that there was no need to justify their reason for eating food. And proudly declares that he has no sins while looking for something in his jacket. He takes out a glowing holy piece of paper, the paper that exempts one from sins. The demon laughs and smiles while showing it off to Dolores, telling her that he was exempted from any sins since he had this paper. He couldn't help but laugh at the fact that a human idea in which sins can be sold in exchange for money, was something that even demons couldn't dream of doing, giving Dantalion a sense of thrill. He continues to reveal that with the idea of using the orphanage as a supply and demand for his food, he simply raised the livestock and applied the supply and demand on the food. Proudly saying that if he had a sin, then it would be that he had learned a lot from the humans. The demon continues to mock Dolores, calling her a bad and wicked human as well. Whispering in her ear that she was just lucky to have been born with divinity, but the fact was, she was so weak on the inside, that she had become useless and a burden to those around her. Dantalion continues to taunt the saintus, mocking her that if it wasn't for her, then it would have been impossible to trap the night bloodhound in his underworld. It was all thanks to her, for being his Achilles heel. Seeing her current state, Dantalion was extremely pleased with himself, as it was always so thrilling for him to see the Satyans speechless. His underground engulfs the negativity of the dead. So right now, he was extremely excited to see the negativity tainted all over the saintus's face. Dolores started to turn her head, telling the demon that he was right, and that everything he said so far was true. From the exemption that humans gave for sins to be exchanged for money, for being allowed to harm others for their own convenience, even her own shortcomings, along with all the weaknesses that humans possess. She admits that all those things will combine, and in the end, create an environment of despair. Dantalion was reaching peak climax as the saintus seemed to finally agree with his own words. His spiked mouth opened widely as saliva spilled everywhere. But wait, there's more. It turns out that the saintus was not in despair, as a bright golden light envelopes her body, with tears dripping down her face. She tells the demon that humans also possess the strength to believe that they can move towards a good path, even when in despair. Dantalion immediately took a step back from her, covering his body with his hands as he was shocked to see the divine power coming from the saintus. It turns out that she was being infected with negativity like he had hoped for. Thanks to the demon, Dolores finally understands just how indecisive she had been up to this point. She couldn't enforce abolishing the exemption because she had been scared of her father, and that she couldn't help the Night Bloodhound because she was terrified of Dantalion. Dolores knew very well how useless she had been this entire time. But then, a certain person once told her something. A flashback is seen where Dolores and Vikir were sitting on a wooden fence together. She asks him a question, about why did God choose a weak person like her to be the saintus. She knew that there were not many other people with strong faith, even if they weren't born with divine power, making her question God, why she was bestowed upon a title of saintus, a title that she felt she didn't deserve at all. God chose you because you're troubled and sorrowful, said Vicky in response to her problems. He continues to tell her that because the person this world needs only shines through when they reach the lowest and fiercest places. To everyone watching this video, never give up. The flashback ends, returning us back to the present where Dolores held her hands together in a prayer form. She couldn't let the Night Bloodhound, who fought fiercely against Dantalion alone, fight by himself anymore. So right now, at this very moment, Dolores needed to do what she could for him. Seeing the powerful divine power radiating from her, Dantalion started to panic over how the divine power would react to his own abilities. So he decides to fool her, telling the saintus the humans he had eaten so far can still live, but souls refined by divine power cannot. Even after hearing those words, Dolores closes her eyes and focuses on her power, no longer being swayed by the words of a demon. In the midst of her prayer, a small hand reaches out to her, holding her hands. Dolores opens her eyes and sees a young boy standing in front of him. Soon after, more little kids from the orphanage appeared behind the young boy. All of them were smiling and waving happily towards the saintus as they were covered in her divine power. Recognizing who these kids were, an endless wave of tears started to pour down from the saintus's eyes as she looked at them, apologizing to the children of the orphanage for not being able to save them. Seeing the children gave her the final push she needed as she let out a powerful ring of divine light all around her, bringing light into this dark and horrible place. In another place, a familiar person was spotted sitting alongside the victims of Dantalion. It really turns out to be Perry. She sat on the ground, her face completely void of any feelings as her eyes showed no signs of life in them. Vikir quietly sat behind the young girl, telling her that he had finally found her once again. As he sat there with her, Vikir started to talk to Perry, telling her about how he was wondering why he had wanted to see her again. It turns out that he had something he wanted to tell her something. As he said this, Vikir's body was slowly crumbling away due to the amount of traumas he was taking in, but still, he continues to talk to Perry. He reveals to her that from now on, he was going to spend his remaining years taking revenge on demons, and that the reason why he had visited the orphanage was in order to hunt down Dantalion. He didn't think about what he would do beyond that. And yet, during the time he had spent in the orphanage, from the moment he had met Perry, Vikir realized something after seeing her angelic smile. If there was one thing that would make this revenge of his meaningful, then it was that Vikir wanted to create a world where he can laugh in the future with children like her. As Dolores's powerful divine power started to reach the place where Vikir was, he gave a final thanks to Perry for creating meaning in his plan. And told her that he was sorry for not being able to protect her. Even though Vikir was slowly losing his life, Perry's voice reached out to him, telling our boy that she was glad that he had come and saw her once again, bringing life back into Vikir's eyes as he heard those words. Turning around, Vikir could see the endless rows of people, their faces filled with life once again, especially Perry, who continued to smile at him. But she couldn't help it as tears started to flow down her face once again as she told Vikir about how scared she had been. The divine power of Dolores was healing and casting away any signs of demonic power within Vikir whilst giving life to those that had been the victims of Dantalion. Wasting no time at all, Vikir immediately pulls Perry into his arms, giving her the biggest hug he could. As they hold one another in their final moments, Vikir promises Perry that he will never forgive the man who made her cry. Hearing that, Perry started to smile, telling Vikir that what he said was now a promise between them. The divine power of Dolores showed no signs of stopping at all as its light radiated so brightly that it could be seen outside the building they were in. Even Dantalion was alarmed by the power, questioning since when had the saintus been this powerful, belonging that she had finally awakened her powers. Once more surprising, was that she was able to purify all the souls he had in his underworld. From out of the light, came out Dolores and the Night Bloodhound, no longer affected by the demon's abilities. Dolores continues to let out her power, engulfing Vikir in its holy light. As he basked in all of its glory, our boy started to notice a change in his body. He could sense that the Baskerville aura he had was overflowing, all thanks to the saintus's divine power, which was exponentially increasing his aura. With the help from Dolores, Vikir believed that in this moment, he could do it now. He can now reach the next level. From 6 spheres of aura, Vikir started to form the 7th in his core. The aura covering his hand was in a gas-like state, but as he focused, it started to solidify. Dantalion immediately recognizes the change that was going on with Vikir, seeing the solid aura that was now covering Beelzebub. To the horror of the demon, Vikir had finally reached the next stage. He was now a swordmaster. With his newly acquired powers, Vikir was about to go on a rampage, his anger maxed out as he promises the demon that he was not going to have an easy death.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.